Hey everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and what do you do when you've got your money out the bank? You go and spend it on Monday Night Raw. Oh, I didn't think that metaphor through. I didn't think that through at all. Yes, that's right, it's time for Monday Night Raw Graded, and I thought I'd try and stay up and watch it live last night, which was a bad idea, because my body clock's already messed up from Money in the Bank, you see, and I thought it would be really easy, but it totally wasn't. So I've cobbled together some notes. It's going to be fine. I'm going to try and remain as fair and unbiased as I possibly can, despite being ravaged by tiredness. But it'll be all right. It's fine. So once again, I'm Jack from Cultaholic.com, and this is Monday Night Raw Graded. So we start things off with the Beast incarnate, the Beast in the Bank, and Paul Heyman as well. Brock Lesnar, who comes out and he's just looking so happy. He's got the briefcase up on his shoulder like a bloody boombox in the 1980s. What a hip and happening guy. Heyman says that both Seth Rollins and Kofi Kingston, obviously the two top champions of their respective brands, should be scared because Brock Lesnar has the Money in the Bank briefcase. That's fair enough. I'd be scared too. I'd be absolutely terrified. Heyman also says that they should be scared because Brock could show up anywhere. And I was like, well, if it's one of the big four, or a special Monday Night Raw that he gets paid extra for, maybe Paul, but I don't think he's going to be showing up on a random house show in Iowa. There's nothing wrong with Iowa. I'm so sorry to people from Iowa. Speaking of Iowa, very, very fortunately for me, Seth Rollins comes out and demands that Brock Lesnar cash in the title right here, right now, tonight. And obviously Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman are like, no, we don't want to do that. We want to keep this advantage that we've got, which is totally fair. I see why all of the characters involved would act in that sort of way. Good character motivations. That's what we like to see. In fact, Heyman says, you know what, Seth, you're going to have to wait a little bit. In fact, you should be good at waiting, like you waited 7 hours at WrestleMania for your girlfriend to main event when it's always been your dream to main event WrestleMania. I was like, what's he doing? He's roasted him alive. Oh my God. And they've now referenced Seth and Becky's relationship on screen. It's all kicking off big style. Heyman says, you know what, Seth, why are you getting so wound up? Because we might not even cash in on you. And this, of course, brings out Kofi Kingston. But wait, Jack, isn't Kofi Kingston a SmackDown Live superstar? That's right, but it's the wild card, bitches. So anyone can show up, and it's absolutely fine. Kofi Kingston comes out with the WWE Championship and cuts a promo saying that he wants to be like one of the most prestigious or one of the best WWE champions in history. I can't exactly remember the word, and he wants to be remembered as one of the best ones around. And Brock Lesnar goes, what are you talking about? Look at you. And I was like, that's Kofi Kingston, mate. Have some respect. Kofi then sort of gets put in his place as well by Paul Heyman, who says, look at both of you. We've got the Universal Champion and the WWE Champion auditioning for a shot at Brock Lesnar, the box office champion. I was like, oh, that is a killer line, Paul. Heyman then closes the segment by telling him to stick around because him and Brock aren't leaving the building, and maybe they'll see them later on tonight. Ooh. I'm going to give this opening segment a B+. I thought it was pretty good fun. I thought Heyman was on fire. I thought that Rollins was on good form as well and really brought the intensity. And obviously Brock looked really, really scary. The only issue for me was Kofi. Not his fault per se, but the words that he was saying sounded a little bit sort of formulaic and a little bit unoriginal. Just for me, that's just for me. But overall, I thought the segment was a pretty good one. I don't agree with the manner in which Brock Lesnar did win the Money in the Bank contract, but I have to concede after watching this that having the briefcase is a good position for Brock. Certainly better than having him as one of the top champions. The only problem is, obviously, that people who hold the briefcase usually become one of the top champions. Next up, Braun Strowman versus Sami Zayn. These two obviously have vicious beef between one another, obviously because Sami Zayn cost Braun Strowman his spot in the Money in the Bank ladder match. Now, this match is not what I wanted to see at all, let's be honest. Strowman chased Sami Zayn to the back before the bell. Sami ran around like a little scamp. Hee hee hee, here I go. Gonna hide in the corners. Bobby Lashley was there for some reason, just as a distraction for Strowman, so Sami came back in and just decked him with a big right hand, to be fair. But Strowman quickly regained control, brought Sami back to the ringside area, and finally the match did begin, with Strowman in a bit of a daze because Zayn had sort of moved out the way and he'd ran into the ring post. But it didn't help Sami Zayn win the match, God no. Strowman got his win within seconds of the bell ringing, and I was very disappointed indeed. So I'm going to give this a D. It's not what I wanted to see. I mean, yes, Strowman should always be made to look strong. Look at him, he's great. And after the whole sort of Colin Jost and Michael Shea thing at WrestleMania, it's nice to see him, you know, be built back up more like towards the top of the card again. However, that's at the expense of Sami Zayn, and I just felt like he was dealt with really easily here, especially after coming back from an injury, big head of steam, cutting all these promos on the fans and everything, only to get squashed by Braun Strowman in seconds. It's not what I wanted to see, really. I mean, Sami last week was having great, I think he had a great match. I think he had a triple threat match on SmackDown and it was really good. Or was it on Raw? Sami had a good match last week. He can still really be a useful asset to WWE in these work rate sort of positions, which he's just not being put into. Next up, we have an interview in the ring with Lars Sullivan. Yeah, let's just send Charlie in to interview this bloke who just attacks people with no rhyme or reason and no one can stop him. That's gonna go well. Luckily, Charlie isn't the victim of this segment. She does ask Lars about his path of destruction, and before he can answer, the Lucha House Party run out and attack, and then Lars systematically deals with them one by one. Eventually, the last man standing is my boy, Lince Dorado. Lars scoops him up for the running powerbomb, but his two buddies are back on the outside and they drag him outside the ring and they all run to the back, and this is going to continue. This is going to bloody continue. Unfortunately, I'm going to give this a D as well. This was basically just a repeat of the Money in the Bank angle, except it was the Lucha House Party on the attack, and Lars was able to dish out a bit less damage than he did at Money in the Bank. Also, I just think from a booking standpoint, it's such an original thing to do because it happened literally one night before, but also it's such an unwise thing to do given the controversial things that Lars has said and how fresh they are in everyone's mind. Why are we feuding him with three Latino guys? I think it's really short-sighted, or just willfully ignorant, I suppose. And by the way, I'm not saying that like we should stop all minorities from feuding with Lars, because that defeats the very point, but what I'm saying is the Lucha House Party aren't going to win this feud. We know this. He's going to just squash them. If he doesn't, then I'll hold my hands up and admit I'm wrong. How about that? Next up, Cesaro versus Ricochet. Cesaro finally has a new singles theme, which sounds a bit superhero, kind of a bit sinister as well, which I guess is a good mixture for Cesaro, who is a superhero, but is also a heel. And I think it sort of does fit him. Even if it's not like a Batista level banger, on the level of like, yeah, I'll walk for my... It didn't go nearly as well as I thought it was going to. The match doesn't last very long, with Cesaro picking up the victory in about 5 minutes because Ricochet's so banged up from Money in the Bank the night before. I'm going to give this a B. Obviously there wasn't a lot to go on, it only lasted about 5 minutes, but the action was solid from two excellent world-class level wrestlers. It was disappointing to see Ricochet lose again. He's starting to lose a bit of momentum in my opinion, but at the same time he was really hurt from Money in the Bank the night before, so I think if he'd beaten Cesaro it would have been an even worse result. I think that this was probably the right way to go, and it's good to see Cesaro pick up a big singles victory. Next up, it's another wild card. It's Roman Reigns who comes out, even though he's a SmackDown superstar, because the wild card rules, yo. Roman gets in the ring. Before he can even say much though, he's interrupted by Shane McMahon. Shane says that he's done with The Miz now. He's beaten him twice and doesn't have to deal with him anymore, even though he won by falling out of his t-shirt, and says, oh, by the way, Roman, I'm coming for you now because of what you did to my dad when Roman beat up Vince. And Roman's like, okay then, I challenge you to a match. And then Shane goes, well, no, not tonight. And I'm like, well, you've come and called him out, Shane. It's all right. I guess it's all right. I shouldn't get too annoyed because he is a heel saying these things, so he doesn't have to make total sense and back up his words at all times. But he came out and went, I'm challenging you. And Roman went, all right then. And then he went, no, I'm not. Ugh. Shane then does the thing that every McMahon does in every promo ever and says, you need to remember as well that I'm your boss. I'm your boss. My favourite one is Triple H when he says it, when he's like, I'm your boss. It's so serious. Shane says that he's, Roman's boss, and then demonstrates that he is his boss and he has more power than him by bringing out Drew McIntyre as his new render henchman. So we've had Lashley and then Elias, and now Drew is affiliated with Shane. I'm just waiting for Baron Corbin to get involved as well, because they're all the same. They're all just in together, aren't they? There's no definite boundaries, there's no stable sort of lines drawn, but they are all heels and therefore they all exist in the same... Yeah, it's just... Oh, man. Then Shane does actually accept, in fairness, he does accept a match with Roman, but in unfairness, it's taking place at Super ShowDown in Saudi Arabia. Yes, get in. Better show than WrestleMania, guaranteed. This gets a D, another D, I'm afraid. I really didn't like it. My main issue isn't with Saudi Arabia, to be honest, because at least they're burning this Shane McMahon match in Saudi Arabia rather than on a main pay-per-view. But at the same time, my real issue here is the positioning of Drew McIntyre. That's why this segment gets such a low grade. Last night, or last night before, I'm tired. On Sunday night, Drew was the favourite, I think, to win the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, and it looked like a big push could potentially be in store for him, and now he's Shane McMahon's lackey. You know, I really, really disagree with that, especially because Drew is so fantastic and such a great all-rounder. I just think he deserves more. And there's plenty of heels that Shane can just snatch up as one of it. He's already got 2 henchmen. He doesn't need a third one. Next up, the Usos and the Revival have a match, and it's a good match. Do you see what happens? Do you see what happens when you just have 2 of the best tag teams in the world and you decide to have them actually wrestle each other rather than laugh at each other for shaving their backs or whatever? Oh my God. It was a good match though. It was a good match. Let's be a bit more positive, Jack. Come on. Now, in fairness, the match didn't go too long and they didn't use all of their best stuff, so hopefully they're keeping some moves back for like maybe a pay-per-view match in the future, if I can count my blessings. But, you know, it was still a really good and fun match. The Revival as well picked up a much-needed victory with a handful of tights and a roll-up and all sneaky heelishness. Yes. I'm going to give it a B+. I thought it was great. It made me really want to see this match actually for the Raw Tag Team titles, and that's when I realised that neither of these teams are the Raw Tag Team champions. And then I realised I haven't seen Hawkins or Ryder for a while. I hope they're okay. Next up, the Firefly Fun House. It was basically just like an elongated version of the theme tune, which then became, you know, all warped and sinister, and there were kids with "Let Me In" written on their head or like on their like body and stuff. It was odd. It was odd, but it was effective, you know. I'm scared of Bray now, still, more so than before. So I'm going to give this a B grade. Still looking forward to his return. Don't know when it's going to be, but he has just had a kid, so I can't be too impatient. Next up, we had a moment of bliss with Alexa Bliss. Stop right there, because there was a co-host as well. It was Nikki Cross. Don't know why I've stopped you so dead on there. I'm very sorry. So I'm going to have to use my notes for this one because there was quite a carousel of wrestlers that came out and I didn't want to get confused. So Nikki is the co-host, Becky Lynch is the guest. The IIconics interrupt and mock Becky for losing one of her titles at Money in the Bank. Then Lacey Evans interrupts and Becky doesn't immediately attack her. She just sort of stands up, which I thought was a bit out of character, but it's okay. And Lacey also mocks Becky Lynch. So the IIconics came out and mocked Becky Lynch. Then Lacey came out and mocked Becky Lynch. Poor Becky. So Becky wants to take all 3 of them on, but the other 3 go, no, the numbers are wrong. You need 3 people. And Becky goes, all right, well, I'll have Nikki. And then they go, the number's still aren't even. They go, well, I'll have Alexa as well then. And Alexa's like, I'm not ready for this. And Becky goes, you just need to stand there and look pretty. And Alexa brings their coffee down to the ring, which was a nice touch, to be fair. I did like that aspect of it. I'm going to give it a C-. It felt a bit contrived. I think everyone's motivations were a little bit shaky, and it did feel like they were all just in there because they booked the match first, and then they had to make the story fit the match rather than make the match fit this. You know what I'm saying. But I did enjoy Alexa here. I thought she was funny, and as we'll see in just a second, she was funny during the match as well. Just not being ready for the match, but also at the same time having her gear on and willfully taking her coffee down to the ring and just leaning on the apron. You know what? It's pretty cool. I like it. Anyway, this gets a C-. Not a perfect segment, but we'll see if the match was any better. The answer is yes, marginally. It was a decent sort of 6-woman tag team match. Basically, the heels isolated Nikki Cross and beat her down a little bit, and the numbers game was working in their favor because Alexa, as we know in real life, is sort of dealing with some injury issues, it seems, and that's probably why she stayed on the outside. But she was entertaining, just sipping her coffee, not really having a care in the world, while Becky desperately tried to get the hot tag. Eventually, Nikki was able to fight off the heels and get the hot tag, and Lacey Evans wanted no part of Becky Lynch. She abandoned the IIconics and went to the back. And Becky picked up the victory by just destroying poor Billie Kay. I'm going to give it a C because I've got very mixed thoughts on this result. I think that Becky desperately did need a win after she'd lost one of her titles. She needs to remain looking strong at the top of the Raw card. But at the same time, the IIconics desperately need a win as well. Desperately, for the sake of those women's tag team titles. So it was a difficult one. All I thought was that the action was fine and the booking was annoying either way. So I've gone straight down the middle with a C grade. Next up, Mick Foley's out to announce WWE's newest championship, and the rumours are true. Not the rumours of it being a return of the hardcore belt, and not the rumours of it being some kind of like Saudi Arabia or Legends belt for Goldberg versus Undertaker. Instead, the rumours of it being a 24/7 title. Ooh, and the crowd booed. Come on, it's the 24/7 title. I think they booed it because it looked a bit grim, but oh, it's a joke title, it's for fun. You don't need it to look really pretty. And to be honest with you, I didn't even think it looked that bad. It's a clock, because 24/7. Anyway, Foley then lays the title in the ring, and to be honest, talks for quite a while. He's like, I'm going to remove myself from the situation. Come on. And I was like, come on, I want to see them wrestle. I want to see them run around and defend the title against each other. And eventually he did leave the ring, and then the wrestlers came out. Here they came, the undercard, the underclass of Monday Night Raw, all fighting with each other on the way down the ramp. It was glorious to see. Technically, Foley said the first person to touch the title would be champion, or the first person to grab it, and that was Carl Anderson. Him and Gallows both grabbed an end of it simultaneously and fought over it, and in the end neither of them ended up with it. But technically, I guess, unofficially Carl Anderson was the first champion, but officially it was Titus O'Neil. So I think what I'll do is, I'll just run down everything that happened in the 24/7 stuff on Graded in like one little chunk, so that I'm not constantly going back to the 24/7 belt throughout the episode of Graded. That's my plan for the future, I think. I hope Adam does the same. I'll have to give him a memo. But basically what happened was Titus O'Neil fought off Drake Maverick to become the first 24/7 champion, and then was immediately rolled up as he celebrated on the ramp by Robert Roode. And then slightly later on, Robert Roode was hiding from people backstage and stuff, and eventually he got to the car park, the parking lot, and R-Truth was there with his car, and Robert Roode was like, let me hide in your trunk, please, and R-Truth was like, okay, and he hid, and then he misdirected all the other superstars back into the arena, and then he got, Roode out of the trunk and went, you're welcome, man, let's get out of here, and then jumped him and slammed his head into the car and pinned him, and I was like, yes, this is what we wanted, this is what the 24/7 title is all about. R-Truth is now the 24/7 champion. He thinks it's actually the European title, that's fine, that's what R-Truth does, and he says he's taking it to SmackDown Live. Right, I'm giving this a B+ because it was stupid and pointless and not even that good, but I loved it. I loved this, okay? This is exactly my cup of... I loved it. I really enjoyed the concept of the 24/7 title back when the Hardcore Championship had those rules attached to it. The idea of a dedicated 24/7 title, it's like I've wished for it myself and it's just came into fruition. Oh my God, it's absolutely amazing. I need to calm down a little bit. The one worrying thing is that Foley said every third hour on Monday Night Raw, the 24/7 title is going to be causing chaos all around the place. And I was like, it's the 24/7 title, Mick. Why would you tell us that it's only going to sort of crop up on Raw once it moves to its third hour? Why would you do that, friend? Next up, The Miz versus Drew McIntyre, which is a pretty good match to be fair, but Shane keeps getting involved on the outside. He keeps laying in cheap shots when the referee's back's turned, and one of these cheap shots directly leads to Drew McIntyre nailing the Claymore kick and picking up the victory over The Miz. Poor The Miz. Can't buy a win at the moment. Yeah, I'm going to give this a B grade. It was a decent match, maybe the match of the night, but none of the matches were really big standout matches this week. But I thought it was decent, and Roman Reigns made the save at the end, running, Shane and Drew off when they tried to continue the beatdown on The Miz. So Roman and Miz are still friends, and it's probably going to lead to some sort of tag match maybe tomorrow night. Wildcard rule, I don't know. But it gets a B, decent match, decent action. Frustrating Shane involvement, but we'll let that slide for now. And finally, the main event of Seth Rollins and Kofi Kingston teaming together to take on Baron Corbin and Bobby Lashley. To be honest though, I found it really hard to get excited in this because we've seen this exact storyline play out just a few weeks ago with Seth and Kofi teaming up against The Bar shortly after WrestleMania. So this didn't feel like anything particularly new, and the action didn't feel too fresh either, really. It did feel like a sort of standard Monday Night Raw main event. And I quite like Baron Corbin as well. I certainly don't hate him as much as a lot of people seem to, but I do feel like this era of Raw is sort of the Corbin era. Like the whole show seems dominated by either Corbin or his mates, his loosely affiliated mates, like his rotating cast of mates that just change with no rhyme or reason. Every segment, it seems like, and it's not true, but it feels like every segment, certainly involving the men's division, has the heel of either one of Baron Corbin's mates or Baron Corbin. The babyfaces anyway pick up a pretty predictable victory with the Trouble in Paradise, and both champions stand tall, and then Lashley spears both of them after the match and heads to the back. And then Brock's music hits, and Brock's coming out. Who's he going to cash in on? He's going to cash in. He's not going to cash in. It was all a little tease, and Paul Heyman says that he'll reveal who he's going to cash in on next week. That's your incentive to tune in again. Bit of a lovely cliffhanger. Ooh. I'm going to give this a B-. The match itself was pretty bland, but at the same time I enjoyed the aftermath with Brock pretending to cash in and the announcement that he'll reveal next week who he's going to cash in on. Let me pretend that it's not going to be for Super ShowDown in Saudi Arabia. Just let me have that. Just let me pretend that it's not going to be for that, and it'll be okay. But it so is going to be that though. So overall, Monday Night Raw gets a C grade, straight down the middle. Nothing particularly bad, nothing particularly good. There were a few things that kind of bucked the trend. There were a few matches or segments where I was like, oh, that was a pretty good performance. And equally, there was some where I thought, oh, the booking of that's pretty ropey. But overall, I think it totally balanced out. And I can't think of anything fairer to give it than an uninspiring C grade. Sorry, Raw. No, it's not my fault, actually. It's your fault. Yeah, Raw, work harder next time, please. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.